Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Babel on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Chaf Daled of Masechta Shabbis, Daf 124. It's a big Daf today, friends. Big Daf with a lot of stuff. Big Daf with a lot of stuff. So, let's do an overview before we begin. So, first at the beginning, we're going to talk about a machlokas between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbah about certain activities that may or may not have been before Muktzah was fully kind of rolled back to the state where we have it currently. Remember, since Nehemiah, who kind of instituted a pretty strict version of Muktzah, and then slowly kind of rolled it back. Then we talk about moving vessels on Shabbos. Davar shemlachto le'iser, davar shemlachto leheter, l'tzorech gufo, l'tzorech mikomo, mechama l'tzel, all of that kinds of stuff. Do we make gezeras on Yom Tiv out of concern for the malachos of Shabbos, meaning things that theoretically could be mutter on Yom Tiv? Would you nonetheless say that they're asur out of concern for the fact that they're asur on Shabbos? Moving broken vessels on Shabbos. And then we talk about shards of pottery and throwing stuff in the garbage. So a lot of different sugyas in this daf. Let us begin. We're on daf Kuf Chaf Gimel Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom of the page. Amar Rabbi Elazar, says Rabbi Elazar, Kanin umaklos, glistros umedocha, kulan kodem ataras kelim nishnu. Okay, so Rabbi Elazar says that there are these 4 things that we're going to explain right now, but they are kanin, are reeds. Maklos are like staff, sticks. Glustera is some kind of like piece of wood or something that you would stick in a what's that called? A threshold of a door, and it would basically lock it. You wouldn't be able to open the door because you would take this like peg of sorts, this kind of piece of wood, stick it into the floor and the threshold. Then you wouldn't be able to open the door anymore because it was blocked. Okay, and also Medocha, a mortar. Okay, so and we're going to see what about these things, but there are brises regarding these 4 inyanim, and Rabbi Elazar wants to argue that these brises were all taught before the halachas of Muktzah were kind of made more lenient. Right, they were taught while the halachas of Muktzah were still more strict. Okay, so what are we talking about over here? So, kanin, when we're talking about reeds, the Tanan, as we learn in the Mishnah, lo sidur hakanin v'lo netilasan doche es haShabbos. Okay, friends, this has to do with the shulchan in the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, the shulchan was this like table. Right, every Shabbos there would be 12 new loaves of bread that were introduced. And I believe that the Kohanim would eat the previous weeks and they would stay fresh the entire week. Then they would bring in 12 new loaves of bread and put them in the shulchan. Now, in the shulchan, they wouldn't just stack the breads directly one on top of the other. There were these half reeds, if I'm not mistaken. They would basically take a reed, a hollow reed, cut it in half, and then they would basically use those halves and as layers in between each row of bread, and each bread would rest on one of these half reeds, so that there would be air circulation among the bread and they wouldn't get moldy. So what this brisa is saying is that, however, on Shabbos, when they would put on these new breads, so they would actually stack them directly one on top of the other. And then after Shabbos, they would go back and put the reeds in between the layers of the bread so that the air would be able to circulate. The reason being that the reeds that they would put in that place were considered muktzah. They're considered muktzah. And because they're muktzah, you wouldn't be able to, pick them up and bring them over to the shulchan, which is also interesting because didn't they say ein shvus b'mikdash? That in the Beis Hamikdash there were no shvuses, and this sounds like a shvus. I don't know. In any event, okay, so Rabbi Elazar wants to argue that the reason why, so it says, what does it say? It says, lo sidra akanin v'lo netilasan. So when they would bring the new loaves of bread, so they would put in new reeds and they would lay the breads on those new reeds. So they wouldn't do that on Shabbos. And also Netilasan, they wouldn't remove the previous week's reeds on Shabbos. Rather, before Shabbos, they would remove the previous week's reeds. And then they wouldn't place the new week's reeds until after Shabbos was over, because the reeds were muktzah. Says Rabbi Elazar, that brisa was taught before, that Mishnah, I guess, was taught before muktzah was rolled back to where we have it now. The point being that at this day and age, you would be able to move these reeds if it's to put in the shulchan. Maklos. What about these staffs that we're talking about? The Tanan, as we learn in the Mishnah, maklos dakin chalakin hayusham umanicho al ksefo v'akosef chavero v'solo umafshit. This is talking about the Korban Pesach, that when the Yidden would go to offer the Korban Pesach on Erev Pesach, they would go to the Beis HaMikdash, and what they would have to do is, after they slaughtered the Korban Pesach, so then they would hang up the Korban, and they would skin it, and as we learned the other day, so you have to hang the Korban, this goat or sheep, by its feet, and you have to hang it from some kind of a pole or something. So what they would do is they would take these staffs, and they would put one end on Reuven's shoulder, the other end on Shimon's shoulder. Then causing a horizontal kind of pole. And then they tie and hang the sheep from this pole, hanging down towards the ground, and then they can skin it. Okay. Now, Rabbi Elazar Omer. Now the Tana Rabbi Elazar says, that if, however, Erev Pesach falls out on a Shabbos, so what do? Do you use this staff? Do you pick up a staff and put it on each other's shoulders? Well, actually, when Erev Pesach falls out on a Shabbos, you do not use these staffs, because the staff would be muktzah. Rather, you use your hand. What happens is, Reuven sticks out his hand, puts it on Shimon's shoulder. Shimon sticks out his hand, puts it on Reuven's shoulder, and like that they create almost like a ki'ilu there was a pole, there was pole between them. Then they take the little sheep guy and they hang it from their arms, and like that they skin the sheep. Yuck! Oh my gosh! Can you imagine if that was you? Okay, fine. So we want to say that the reason why this Mishnah is saying that the staff was considered muktzah is because it was before they rolled back some of the stringencies of muktzah. Glustera. Okay, what are we talking about when we're referring to this peg kind of thing, this wood thing that you would stick into the threshold of the door as a lock to make sure that the door could not open or be opened? The Tanan, as we learn in a Mishnah, Nagar sheyesh birosho glustera. If you have one of these wooden beam peg door stopper thingamajiggies, so if it has birosho glustera, if at the top of it it's very thick, and you can also, I guess, use it to pound stuff. Okay. Rabbi Yeshua Omer shomta min Pesach zeh v'tola b'chavero. Okay. So what you can do is, if let's say you have a bunch of houses and they are in a chatzer, okay, and there's an eruv in the chatzer, so you can kind of carry from one house to the other house in the chatzer. However, what Rabbi Yeshua is suggesting is that you cannot actually carry it because it'll be muktzah. So if you have this door thingy, and you want to move it to a different door in the chatzer, so you will have to drag it and do tiltul min atzad, because out of concern of violating the laws of muktzah. Wow. Some little kid sounds very unhappy. Well, alright. Okay. Well, I'm sure that somebody's taking care of them. Sounds like they've calmed down. Rabbi Tarfon Omer, says Rabbi Tarfon, Hareyu kechol akelim umitatu b'chatzer. Rabbi Tarfon says, no, unhappy again. Okay, Rabbi Tarfon says that that this doorstop thingy is like all of the kelim, meaning you can move it, just regularly, you can move it. Okay, but I guess that we want to argue that according to Rabbi Yehoshua, the reason why you wouldn't be able to move it is because we are out of concern of the very strict muktzah rules before they were rolled back somewhat. Midocha, when it comes to what is the situation of this mortar, Hada Amaran, it's referring to what we've been talking about. I think we talked about it yesterday a bit. Yes, we did. This mortar that doesn't have any garlic in it. So we say that you can't move it at all. And again, we're going to say that was due to the very strict laws of muktzah. Amar Rabba. So Rabba argues with Rabbi Elazar. Mimai, how come you're saying that these brisas and mishnahs were taught before the muktzah rules were rolled back somewhat? Dilma, le'olam emelach, la'achar ataras kelim nishnu. Wow, what could possibly be wrong? Who knows? In any event, so really I will say to you that all of these mishnahs and brises and stuff were taught after, meaning when muktzah was already, amended to be as we know it to this day. Okay, so then what's pshat? How come we weren't able to use all these various items? So kanim, the reason why they wouldn't move the reeds in the Beis HaMikdash, were time amai, how come you used the reeds in the first place on the shulchan? Mishum I apushe, by portalo mi apesh. Well, the whole reason why you're using the reeds in the first place is to prevent these breads from getting moldy. Well, look, if you're putting the point is that we don't want the breads to get moldy by being one on top of each other for a whole week. And as Rashi says, which is very interesting, meaning, what do you mean we're worried about things getting moldy? The whole thing was a miracle in the first place, right? The fact that they would put the breads on the shulchan on one Shabbos and they would eat it the next Shabbos and it was mamish, fresh as the day it was baked, the whole thing was miraculous. So why are we worried about it getting moldy, right? So it says Rashi, Tilo samchinan anisa, because we don't rely on miracles, right? Even though, yeah, it's true, the whole thing was a miracle and probably if you wouldn't put on the reeds, they would probably still be fresh the next Shabbos. But the point is, we don't just, you say, okay, well, it's a miracle, therefore I'm just going to rely on the miracle. No, we put on these reeds. And we're saying that, reeds, if you would leave regular bread without reeds for a few hours, it really wouldn't be the end of the world. And therefore, since really you don't need to be putting on these reeds on Shabbos, you can wait until after Shabbos, even though it wouldn't necessarily, and this could even be after, when we have the current laws of muktzah. Okay. Maklos, when it comes to these staffs that they would put on each other's shoulders and hang the Korban Pesach, so Efshir Rabbi Elazar, the reason why they would not use the staffs in the Beis HaMikdash when they were skinning the Korban Pesach when Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos, well, because you could just do like Rabbi Elazar says, use your arms. So if you can use your arms, why should you take a staff? Okay, interesting. Glustera, and this door peg thing, the reason why Rabbi Yehoshua suggests that you should drag it rather than pick it up, because like Rabbi Yanai, Rabbi Yanai says that it's talking about where it's in a chatzer that doesn't have an eruv. They didn't make an eruv. You have a few different houses. They open up into this courtyard. They didn't make an eruv. And since they didn't make an eruv, you're not allowed, so it depends. You would not be allowed to take something out of your house and bring it and walk around with it in the chatzer since there's no eruv. But something that was already in the chutzner, well, the chutzner itself is a Rishus HaYachid, you would be able to carry things in the chutzner. So now, Rabbi Yehoshua says that you should drag it, Savar Tocha Pesach Kilifnim Dami, V'kamitato Mana Debatim B'chutzner. So Rabbi Yehoshua says that the Tocha Pesach, that this threshold, this place where you're going to be putting this peg to keep the door locked, is considered like it's in the house. And since it's considered like it's in the house, well then, if you're going to bring it out of the house to bring to your friend's house so that you can use it as a door, lock stopper thing over there, well, then you're going to be taking something from your house into the chutzner and carrying it to your friend's house. Well, that wouldn't be allowed because there's no eruv. Rabbi Tarfon Savar Tocha Pesach Kilachutz Dami Umana Dechatzer Bechatzer Kamitalta. Whereas Rabbi Tarfon says that the threshold, the place where this doorstop is going to be placed, is considered like outside, is considered like the chatzer, and therefore you're just carrying something in the chatzer. which is beseder. So it's just hayachid. That's why Rabbi Tarfon says you can carry it normally. Where Rabbi Yoshua says, since you wouldn't be allowed to carry something out of your house into the chatzer, therefore you have to kind of schlep it and drag it on the floor, because then it's tiltul minatzad. Medocha, Rabbi Nechemi. What about the fact that you're not allowed to move a mortar that doesn't have any garlic in it? So we say, well, that's because it's Rabbi Nechemiah's opinion. And Rabbi Nechemiah's opinion, of course, is that you can only move something on Shabbos for its main reason that it exists. And the main reason why this mortar exists is to pound stuff, which is tolada of tochen, and therefore, which is a malacha on Shabbos. And the only reason you'd be able to move this mortar on Shabbos would be to grind. And of course, grinding is a malacha. Therefore, you can't move this mortar at all. But according to Rabbah, all of these Mishnahs and Brises and stuff were taught, once Muktzah was already as we know it today. New Mishnah. Kol hakelim nitadon litzorech v'shelo litzorech. So the Mishnah says that all vessels are able to be moved, whether they are needed, whether they are not needed, and we're going to explain what this means. It's going to be, of course, a machlokas. Rabbi Nechemiah omer ein nitadon el litzorech. Whereas Rabbi Nechemiah says that you can only move things litzorech, for a need. We're going to have to explain what we're going to have to understand what this means when the Tanakama says that they can be moved bein litzorech, bein shelo litzorech, and what it means when Rabbi Nechemiah says that it can only be used litzorech. My litzorech u my shelo litzorech. So boom. So the Gemara already asks, what does it mean when it says litzorech, and what does it mean when it says shelo litzorech? So Amar Rabba, litzorech is davar shemalachto leheter, litzorech gufa. So when it says in the Mishnah that you're allowed to move something on Shabbos litzorech, it's talking about you're allowed to move a davar shemalachto leheter litzorech gufo, for because you need to use it. Okay, so going back to our example of the back scratcher, you can move the back the fork as a back scratcher, so you can use a fork which is a davar shemalachto leheter, and you can move it to use as a back scratcher on Shabbos, no problem. Shelo litzorech. So now, what does it mean that you're also allowed to move this? Move things shelo litzorech. It means davar shemalachto leheter. So it's the same thing that is mutter on Shabbos, such as a fork. Litzorech mikomo. But you just need its place, right? You want to put down a book on the table, but there's a fork there, so you can move the fork because you need its place. And according to Rabbah, that's what it means that you can move something on Shabbos. Bein litzorech, bein shelo litzorech. It's talking about a davar shemalachto leheter. It means you can move it whether because you need to use it, like maybe as a back scratcher, or because you want to, put something in its place. Now, however, and this is the Gemara talking, if it were to be v'davar shemalachto le'iser, if, however, it wouldn't be a davar shemalachto leheter, rather it would be a davar shemalachto le'iser, such as a blacksmith's hammer, litzorech gufo in litzorech mekomo lo. You would only be allowed to move it litzorech gufo, such as to open a nut, but you would not be able to use it litzorech mekomo. If you wanted to put down a book on the table and you said, oh, there's a blacksmith's hammer, you would not be allowed to move the blacksmith's hammer. Okay, so according to Rabbah, Rabbah explains that according to the Tanakama, when it says that you're allowed to move something on Shabbos, litzorech, bein litzorech, bein shelo litzorech, it means it's talking about a davar shemalachto leheter, and it's saying that you're allowed to move it whether it's the tzorech gufo or whether it's the tzorech mekomo. But also Rabbi Nechemiah lemeimar, and comes Rabbi Nechemiah to say, actually, va'afilu davar shemalachto leheter, the tzorech gufo in the tzorech mekomo lo. Whereas Rabbi Nechemiah comes and he argues on the Tanakh and says, no, actually when it comes to davar shemalachto leheter, you can only move it the tzorech gufo. You cannot move it the tzorech mekomo. Okay, fine. Omar le Rava. So now Rava has a problem with his Rebbe Rabbah's explanation of the Mishnah. He says, "Litzorech mekomo shelo litzorech kares le." There was something peculiar about Rabbah's explanation of the Mishnah. Maybe some of us picked up on it. What's peculiar? That how is Rabbah defining that you can move something bein litzorech, but how does he define something bein shelo litzorech? How did Rabbah define that you're allowed to move something on Shabbos shelo litzorech? It's talking about a davar shemalachto leheter litzorech mekomo. He's defining shelo litzorech as litzorech mekomo. Doesn't that seem a little backwards? He's defining you can move something if there's no need for it, And that's talking about a situation where you need its place. He's defining something that is not needed as something that is needed. It's a little backwards, right? Right? So l'tzorech mekomo shelo l'tzorech karesle. You're saying that when you want to move a davar shemalachto leheter l'tzorech mekomo, that's what you're saying is referred to by moving something shelo l'tzorech. What do you mean shelo l'tzorech? You need its place. It's l'tzorech mekomo. So rather, Rava says he doesn't buy it. Elo amar Rava therefore suggests his own opinion. L'tzorech davar. So what's l'tzorech? What does it mean when the Mishnah says you can move something l'tzorech? Davar shemalachto leheter, bein l'tzorech gufo, bein l'tzorech mekomo. When it says that you're allowed to move something l'tzorech, it's talking about a davar shemalachto leheter, and that you can move for any kind of a need. If you need it, if it's l'tzorech, you can move it. Whether that is l'tzorech gufo, whether that is l'tzorech mekomo, it's okay. Davar shemalachto leheter, you can move it l'tzorech. And what does it mean you can even move it shelo l'tzorech? Shelo l'tzorech va'afilu mechama l'tzel. It means you can even move it, a davar shemalachto leheter, you can move it even from sun to shade. Meaning you don't need it right now. Right? If we're talking about our fork, I don't need it right now to scratch my back. I also don't need the place where it's consuming. Simply, it's in the sun, and I want to get it out of the sun. I don't want it to get ruined. So, therefore, I want to move it from the sun to the shade. You can do that as well. It's what's considered shelo l'tzorech, and the Tanna Kama is saying you can move it also shelo l'tzorech. Fine. Now, the Gemara points out, and however, a davar shemalachto le'isur, however, if it were to be a davar shemalachto le'isur, such as a blacksmith's hammer, l'tzorech gufo, l'tzorech mekomo in, you would be able to move it both l'tzorech gufo, such as to crack a nut, or l'tzorech mekomo, such as if you want to put a book down where the blacksmith's hammer is. However, mechama l'tzel lo, you would not be able to move it from sun to shade. Okay, fine. V'asur ben chemi l'meimar, and comes Rabbi Nechemia to say, by the way, v'afilu davar shemalachto leheter, when it comes to davar shemalachto leheter, it's only permitted l'tzorech, but not shelo l'tzorech. L'tzorech gufo, l'tzorech mekomo in, mechama l'tzel lo. Says Rabbi Nechemia that by davar shemalachto leheter, you can only move it l'tzorech, i.e., l'tzorech gufo and l'tzorech mekomo. But shelo l'tzorech, right, if you want to move it from the sun to the shade, that would not be allowed. Okay, fine. That is the machlokas between Rabba and Rava regarding how to understand this Mishnah. According to Rabba, the Tanna Kama is saying that you can move things on Shabbos bein l'tzorech, bein shelo l'tzorech. That is talking about davar shemalachto leheter. You can move it whether it's l'tzorech gufo or l'tzorech mekomo. Whereas Rabbi Nechemia holds that you would only be able to move a davar shemalachto leheter l'tzorech gufo, but not l'tzorech mekomo. Fine. Rava disagrees, and he says that according to the Tanna Kama, you can move a davar shemalachto leheter bein l'tzorech, meaning bein l'tzorech gufo or l'tzorech mekomo, bein shelo leheter, bein shelo l'tzorech, meaning you can move it even from the sun to the shade when it's a davar shemalachto leheter. And Rabbi Nechemia disagrees with that and says, no, you can only move a davar shemalachto leheter l'tzorech gufo, l'tzorech mekomo. You would not be able to move it from the sun to the shade. Fine. Yosef Rav Safra v'Rav Acha bar Huna v'Rav Huna bar Chanina. Okay, so Rav Safra and Rav Acha bar Huna and Rav Huna bar Chanina were sitting. And of course, when they were sitting, what were they doing? They weren't just joking around. They were learning. V'yasve v'ka'amrei, they were sitting and they were saying, now the Rabba aliba de Rabbi Nechemia. So according to Rabba, according to Rabbi Nechemia, who says what, friends? I'll tell you what he says. So according to Rabba, according to Rabbi Nechemia's opinion, a davar shemalachto leheter, you can only move l'tzorech gufo. You may not move it l'tzorech mekomo. Well then listen to this, friends. It's a great question. Hanikairis heichim metaltalinon. You're at a Shabbos meal. You're at a Friday night meal, and you had whatever you ate for dinner, and now you want to clear the plates. How can you possibly clear the plates? What are the plates? The plates are a davar shemalachto leheter. You can use it, you can eat on plates, no problem. However, according to Rabba's explanation of Rabbi Nechemia, you can only move a davar shemalachto leheter l'tzorech gufo, not l'tzorech mekomo. You can move it if you need to, use it, such as to eat from, sure. If you want to use the plate to eat, you can move it. But you already ate. You don't need it to eat anymore. You just want to use the place where the plate is. But he says you're not allowed to move it l'tzorech makomo. So how could you, according to Rabbah, like what do you do? According to Rabbi Nechemiah's opinion, what do you do when you're done eating? You just have to leave the plate there for the rest of Shabbos. You mamash can't touch it. The only reason why you'd be able to move it would be because you want to put something else there. But he says you're not allowed to move davar shemalachto leheter l'tzorech makomo. So that's his kasha. So Amar Lahu, Rav Safra midi dahava agraf shorei. So Rav Safra says no. Even Rabbi Nechemiah would say you can move it. How come? Because it's like taking out the garbage. It's like a bedpan. It's like a graf shorei, right? It's something disgusting. It's something maos, right? I don't want to sit there with like, my dirty plate for the rest of Shabbos. So just like I can take out the garbage, I can also take the plate and put it somewhere else so that it's not in front of me. Okay. Amalei Abaye l'Rabba. Now it says Abaye directly to Rabba. So this was Rav Safra and Rav Acha bar Huna and Rav Huna bar Chanina just discussing Rabba's opinion. Abaye was a shtickle celebrity though. He mamish got to talk to Rabba directly. Rabba was his teacher. So instead of just discussing Rabba's opinion, he mamish went to Rabba and asked him the same question. Hey Rabba, Limar, according to you, Alibud Rabbi Nechemiah, it's the same as Akasha. According to Rabbi Nechemiah, how can you clear off the table after you've eaten? Amrle Rav Safra, so I guess Rav Safra was there, and he said to Abaye, Chaverin Tirgama Mididav Agraf Shorei. He said, oh, by the way, I was thinking the same thing. I was sitting with Rav Acha bar Huna and Rav Huna bar Chanina, and we were discussing the same question, and we came up with the answer, which is that you should be able to move these used plates because they're like a graf shel rei. And I guess Abaye was satisfied. Eisve Abaye l'Rava. Abaye asked the kasha to Rava. Interestingly, it's the third time in the last 2 days that Abaye is asking the same two questions. First he asked it against Rabba yesterday, then he asked it against Rava, now he's asking it again against Rava. Okay? Eisve Abaye l'Rava. Midocha imyeshba shum mitatlin osa. We said that if you have a mortar, if there is garlic in it, you'd be allowed to move it. If there's no garlic in it, then you're not allowed to move it. Now, a mortar, of course, is a davar shemalachto le'isser. Now, according to Rava, you're allowed to move a davar shemalachto le'isser bein l'tzorech gufo, bein l'tzorech mikomo. So Abaye is saying, look, I understand according to Rabba, because he says that you're only allowed to move a kli shemalachto le'isser l'tzorech gufo, but not l'tzorech makomo. So I can explain that this mortar is talking about it. It's davar shemalachto le'isser. You cannot move it. Why? Because it's talking about l'tzorech makomo. So Rava answers, so Rava says, easy. Why can't you move this mortar? Because you're moving it from the sun to the shade, and davar shemalachto le'isser, you're not allowed to move from the sun to the shade. Eisvei, then Abaye asks another kasha. V'shavin shem kitzev alav basar she'asu l'taltalo. Right, the same kasha that he asked yesterday, which is that both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that on Yom Tif you'd be allowed to chop up meat on a pestle, but that's about it. After that, you would not be able to move it for any other purpose. But according to you, Rava, it's a davar shemalachto le'isser. You should be allowed to move it. Bein l'tzorech gufo, bein l'tzorech makomo. So Rava just says the same answer, which is, the reason why you can't move it, it means that you can't move it from the sun to the shade, but you'd be allowed to move it l'tzorech gufo, l'tzorech makomo. Okay, so now the Gemara asks a kasha. V'haditnan. We have a Mishnah in Beitza. What does the Mishnah say? In somchen sakadera bebikas v'chein bedelis. You cannot take a pot and put it on a piece of wood on Yom Tif. You also wouldn't be able to take a door and support it on a piece of wood on Yom Tif. Okay, so what are we saying? So we're saying that on Yom Tif, you would not be allowed to take a pot and put it on a piece of wood. A regular piece of wood, a piece of wood that you could put in a fire. So the Gemara says, "V'bikas de Yom Tif davar shemalachto leheterhu." Now 1 second. We're talking about Yom Tif. On Yom Tif, you're allowed to take pieces of wood and put them in a fire. So it's a davar shemalachto leheter. So davar shemalachto leheter. You're allowed to use it on Yom Tif. You can put it in the fire. And yet we're saying that you can't put a pot on it. So we see then that a davar shemalachto leheter, such as this piece of wood on Yom Tif, you would not be allowed to use it, whether it is l'tzorech gufo, such as here, you want to put a pot on it, why not? Or if it's tzarech makomo, because you want to put something in its place, you would not be allowed to use this davar shemlachto leheter. But it would seem that bein liraba, bein lirava, a davar shemlachto leheter, you should be able to use bein the tzarech gufo, bein the tzarech makomo. So the Gemara answers, Asam Ainu Taima. So the Gemara answers that the reason why on Yom Tov you can't put a pot on this piece of wood is because Kevin de B'Shabbos davar shemlachto le'isarhu k'zer Yom Tov atu Shabbos. Since on Shabbos this piece of wood you have no purpose on it, meaning the only reason that you'd be able to use this piece of wood is for burning, and on Shabbos you can't burn it. So if it's a davar shemlachto le'isar on Shabbos, so since on Shabbos, this piece of wood that's for burning is a davar shemlachto le'isr, therefore you wouldn't be able to use it on Shabbos, and that's why we also say not to use it on Yom Tov. Now, of course, the Gemara says, but one second. V'chitema Shabbos gufei tishtri, da davar shemlachto le'isr, l'tzarech gufa l'tzarech makom moshari, but one second. Didn't we say that a davar shemlachto le'isr, you're allowed to move on Shabbos, whether it's a tzarech gufo, or if it's tzarech, that you're allowed to move it on Shabbos, bein the tzarech gufo, bein the tzarech makomo, at least according to Rava. So therefore, why shouldn't you be able to put this pot on this piece of wood even on Shabbos? And certainly you should be able to use it on Yom Tov, where it's davar shemlachto leheter. So the Gemara gives an interesting answer, a very interesting answer. Hanimile echadika toras kli alav, hechadilekas torah kli alav lo. When we say that a davar shemlachto le'isr you can use bein the tzarech gufo, bein the tzarech mamono. No, not mamono, makomo. Listen up, friends, this is very important. It's not talking about anything shemlachto le'isr. It's talking about a kli shemlachto le'isr. So this piece of wood that isn't a kli, it's just a piece of wood that you're going to throw in a fire. So it's something that's melachto le'isr, because you're going to throw it in a fire, and it's not even a kli. It's just a piece of wood. So therefore, it's not, you cannot use it l'tzarech gufa, l'tzarech makomo. When we say that a davar shemlachto le'isr you can use l'tzarech gufa, l'tzarech makomo, it's talking about a kli. But this piece of wood is just a regular piece of wood, and therefore you would not be able to move it l'tzarech gufa, l'tzarech makomo, and therefore you would on Shabbos, and that's why on Yom Tov as well you wouldn't use it because we make a gzer by Yom Tov because of Shabbos. But now the Gemara wants to know, Umi Gazrina, do we really make such a gezerah? Do we really say that when something is not allowed on Shabbos, we say that it's not allowed on Yom Tov either? V'hatnan, but we have a Mishnah, a beferish Mishnah in Beitza that says, Mishilin Peris derech aruba b'Yom Tov, aval lo b'Shabbos. That you can lower fruits through a skylight from the roof into the house on Yom Tov, but not on Shabbos. So here we have an explicit example in Beitza where there's something that you could do on Yom Tov that you don't do on Shabbos. So apparently it's not such a big deal to have certain things that are allowed on Yom Tov that even though they're not allowed on Shabbos. And therefore, even though you wouldn't be able to move this piece of wood on Shabbos because it's not a kli and it's melachto le'isr, but even though you can't use it on Shabbos, you should be able to use it on Yom Tov because on Yom Tov it's melachto leheter. So, but then the Gemara says, but wait a second. Umi lo gazrina? But do we not make gezeras from Shabbos to prevent us doing things on Yom Tov? V'atnan, but we learn in a different Mishnah, Ein ben Yom Tov l'Shabbos elochol nefesh b'lvad. There's no difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos. The only difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos is when it comes to food. Otherwise, they're exactly the same. And we're not going to have things that are mutter on Yom Tov and also on Shabbos. So now what do? We basically, sounds like we have two conflicting Mishnahs. One Mishnah says that when it comes between Shabbos and Yom Tov, we don't make any distinctions. We have another Mishnah that says that we can lower, these dried fruits through the roof to prevent them from getting ruined in the rain. We could do it on Yom Tov, but not on Shabbos. So we see that we do make a difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos. Amr of Yosef. So if Yosef tries to resolve this inconsistency, and he says, Lo kasha Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua. He says, you know what? it's just a machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. And he's going to quote us the same, the same brisa that we saw the other day with the parent animal and the child animal that fell into a pit, and their respective approaches towards that. The Tanya is we learn in a brisa also as beno shenaflu lebor. If you have an animal and its child that fell into a pit, so what do? Can you take them out of the pit on Yom Tiv? Right? Now you can't shech both of them on Yom Tiv, because you can't shech a parent and child on the same day. I believe the pasuk says, "Oso v'ez beno lo sishritu b'yom echad." So you can't shech them on the same day. So can you take them both out of the pit? Maybe they're muksa. Rabbi Eliezer omer mailes harishon amnas l'shochto. So you can take out the first one in order to shecht it. V'shochato v'asheni oso lo parnasa b'mkom b'shvil shlo yamus. So you take out the first one on Yom Tiv so that you can shecht it, and you do shecht it. What do you do with the second one? The second one you leave there, and you just kind of give it enough food so that it can survive, but you wouldn't be able to take it out because you wouldn't be able to, do the tircha, the burden of removing the animal from the pit if, you don't have any reason for it. Because you can't shecht it anyways. So, okay. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, whereas Rabbi Yeshua says no. You can pull out the first one in order to shecht it. But you don't actually shecht it. And you do like a sneaky kind of move. And then you pull out the second one because maybe you could say, oh, you know what, I actually like the second one better. Okay. And now and now you can shecht whichever one of them you want once you pull them out. So let's say that Rabbi Eliezer is going to be the one that was the author of the Mishnah of there's no difference between Shabbos and Yom Tiv. That we don't distinguish between Shabbos and Yom Tiv. And therefore, if on Shabbos I wouldn't be able to, so the goat that I could pull out of the pit to shecht and eat on Yom Tiv, sure, no problem. But what about the second goat? I can't eat it. And on Shabbos I wouldn't be able to pull it out of the pit. It's tircha. Wouldn't be able to pull it out of the pit on Shabbos. So we want to argue that according to Rabbi Eliezer, I also wouldn't be able to pull it out in Yom Tiv. And therefore, he's the author of the Mishnah that says that there's no difference between Shabbos and Yom Tiv, only Ochel Nefesh. Fine. And we'll say that Rabbi Yeshua, who says that, no, when it comes to Yom Tiv, you would be able to pull out even though on Shabbos you wouldn't be able to pull out the animal, because it would be, as Rashi says, right, the Shari Tircha b'Yom Tiv, Mishum Ibud Mammon, who permits doing extra burdens on Yom Tiv if it's in a place where you might lose money. So he's saying, look, you could pull out the second animal because you might it has to do with mammon. You might lose money if the animal dies or whatever. So you could pull that one out as well. So he'll be the author, even though you wouldn't be able to do it on Shabbos, but you would be able to do it on Yom Tiv. And therefore, he would be the author of the Mishnah that says that you'd be allowed to put the fruits that are drying on the roof, you can bring them into the house in order to save money on Yom Tov, even though you wouldn't be able to do that on Shabbos. Okay, fine. But then the Gemara says, Mimai, how do we know that this is really correct? How do we know that the first Mishnah that says that you could bring in the fruits on Yom Tov but not on Shabbos is Rabbi Yoshua, and that the second Mishnah says that there's no difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos except for Ochel Nefesh? How do we know that that is Rabbi Eliezer? Dilmad kan lo ka'amar Rabbi Eliezer hasam el de'efshir lefarnasa. Maybe the only reason why Rabbi Eliezer says over there that you're not allowed to pull out the second animal that fell into the pit is because, as he suggests, well, you can just feed it stuff in the pit until the next day. I mean, it might not be ideal, but we're not going to let you violate tircha if you can keep the thing alive. However, but maybe over here he would be the author, he would agree with the Mishnah that says that you could bring in the fruits from the roof to save them from the rain, since there's no way to prevent that from happening. So maybe he would say that. Maybe he could be the author of that. Inami, or else I can make the argument about Rabbi Yoshua. Ad kan lo kam Rabbi Yoshua asam defshir b'ha'arama. Maybe the only reason why Rabbi Yoshua says by the animals that you can pull both of them out is because you can make a scheme. You could say, you know what, that one looks better. And therefore, because of this, on account of the scheme, you could take both of them out. But maybe in this case, with bringing the fruit into the house to protect them from the rain, I mean, what kind of scheme are you going to come up with? It's pretty clear. You want to do tircha yisera on Yom Tif in order to prevent a loss of money. Maybe Rabbi Yoshua would say that it's not allowed. So therefore, Rav Yosef's attempt to explain away the difference between these two Mishnayos, one that says that you're allowed to bring in the fruits from the roof to the house on Yom Tov, but not on Shabbos, and the other Mishnah that says that there's no difference between Yom Tov and Shabbos, that basically, we're not going to have gezeras on Yom Tov or things that would be permitted on Yom Tov that are also on Shabbos. So we wanted to say that by the fruits on Yom Tov, that would be Rabbi Yoshua, and that Ein ben Yom Tov the Shabbos would be Rabbi Eliezer, but that didn't work out. El Amar of Papa, Lo Kasha Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. So rather, Rav Papa answers that the way to explain these two Mishnayos is that one of them is Beis Shammai and one of them is Beis Hillel. Okay? Titnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Beis Shammai Omrim, say Beis Shammai, in Mutziin es HaKa'in. Oh, that's interesting. In Mutziin es HaKa'in ve'es HaLulav ve'es HaSefer Torah l'Rishus Arabim. That according to Beis Shammai, you're not allowed to bring out a katan, a little guy, or a lulav, or a Sefer Torah to Rishus Harabim on Yom Tiv. Uvisil Matir, and Basil says that you would be allowed to. So we see over here that Beis Shammai is making no distinctions between Shabbos and Yom Tiv, whereas Basil is saying, no, on Yom Tiv you would be allowed to take out these things, right? A cotton, a lulav, and a Sefer Torah. So we see that there is a difference between Yom Tiv and Shabbos. So we'll say that Beis Hillel is the author of the Brisa that says that you could bring in, of the Mishnah that says you could bring in the fruits from the roof on Shabbos, on Yom Tov, but not on Shabbos. And Beis Shammai would be the author of the Mishnah that says there's no difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov. Fine. But the Gemara asks, Emer de Shamas Luhu Lebeis Shammai Otza Tilto Mi Shamas Lu. But 1 second. I'll say that maybe Beis Shammai say that with regard to Hotzah, you can't take something out from Rishus HaYachid or Rishus HaRabim on Yom Tiv, but maybe Legabe Tilto, moving stuff, they might say that it's okay, to move, let's say, to move these fruits from the roof to inside on Yom Tiv, but not on Shabbos. So the Gemara says, V'tilto Gufe Lam Shemotzai, but even, so the Gemara says something very interesting, but, right, that is, but 1 second, isn't moving things, after all, only a concern of Hotza'ah? Interesting. I guess that the concern is that if you're going to move things, then you might end up taking them out. Very interesting. Ve'amar Rav, ve'af Rav savla la leha de Rava. So that's a big score for Rava. So apparently, Rav holds like Rava's opinion, like Rava's perspective towards muktzah in terms of davar shemlachto le'isr and davar shemlachto le'heter, and that's a big deal because Rava was a 4th generation Amora. Rav was like way up there, right? Rava's teachers were Rabba and Rav Nachman, right? And Rabba's teacher was Rav Yehuda, who was a student of Rav as well as Shmuel. Rav Nachman was a student of Rav and Shmuel, meaning the fact that, right, Rav was 1st generation, so the fact that Rav holds like Rava definitely gives support to Rava's opinion. So let's see. So Rav Savila Lahad Rava. So even Rav, if you look at what he says, is in line with Rava's perspective on muktzah. The Amar Rav, that says Rav, or tiltal really. Mar, a hoe, H-O-E, shelo yiganev, zeu tiltal shelo letzorech ve'aser. If you say, hey, I left my hoe outside, and the hoe is a davar shemlachto le'isr. It's for hoeing your field, for working your field. That's not allowed. So if a guy says on Shabbos, I left out my hoe, I want to bring it inside so that nobody steals it. So that's basically, so you don't need it l'tzorech gufo, you don't need it l'tzorech mamono. It's basically the equivalent of getting it out of the sun so it doesn't get ruined, right? You don't need it. There's no tzorech immediately, but you just want to prevent something negative from happening in the future. So Rav says you would not be allowed to do that. You would not be allowed to do that. You would not be allowed to move a davar shemlachto le'isr so that it doesn't get stolen. And we want to say that the reason why Rav says that you would not be allowed to move this hole right now is because you're only concerned that it won't get stolen. But if you had a use for it, whether it was a tzorech gufo, whether it was the tzorech mikomo, that would be acceptable, just like Rava, who says that a davar shemlachto le'isr, you can move bein the tzorech gufo, bein the tzorech mikomo. Ini, does Rav really hold this way? For Rav Kahana ikla levei Rav, but Rav Kahana visited Rav. Okay? Now remember, there were two Rav Kahanas. One of them, I believe, was a teacher of Rav Ashi, if I'm not mistaken. The other one was a student of Rav, I believe. So this, of course, was the one who was a student of Rav. Wasn't that the interesting story with Rav and Rav Kahana at the end of Masechta Brachos, where Rav Kahana was kind of hiding out under Rav's bed to learn, to see how to do some user research, observations, to see how Rav sleeps with his wife? I think so. So, didn't Rav Kahana visit Rav? Ve'omar, and Rav said, Aisule shusa lekahana, go bring a trap for Kahana to sit on. Sounds a little risky, but anyways, fine. So, shusa lekahana le'sev alei. So Rav said, go bring a trap for Kahana. But he didn't just say bring a trap for Rav Kahana. He said bring a trap for Rav Kahana to sit on. So Lav l'meimer d'davish melachto le'eser l'tzorach gufo in l'tzorach makom alo. Why did Rav have to specify get that trap so that Rav Kahana has something to sit on? Was he not being explicit and making it as clear as possible that he's saying, I want this trap, which is a davish melachto le'eser, but don't worry, it's because I want to use it as a seat, because I'm using it l'tzorach gufo, implying that a davar shemlachto le'isr is only mutter l'taltalo l'tzorach gufo, but not l'tzorach mekomo. So the Gemara answers, Hachi Amalu, this is what Rav was saying to them, Shkolu Shusa Mikame Kahana. No, actually he was saying, remove the trap so that Rav Kahana can sit down. Meaning, what he was saying is that a davar shemlachto le'isr is actually movable l'tzorech mekomo, and that's just like Rava. And he was saying, get it out of the way so Rav Kahana can sit down. Or I'll say, hasam micham letzel hava. Or the trap was in the sun, and Rav Kahana and Rav were hanging out in the shade, and therefore he wanted to make it clear that, since it's a davar shemlachto le'isr, you wouldn't be allowed to move it from the sun to the shade. So therefore he wanted to make it clear that the reason why I'm asking you to bring me this davar shemlachto le'isr, this trap from the sun into the shade, is not because it's mutter to move from the sun to the shade. Rather, it's because I want a chair for Rav Kahana. But really, he does hold like Rava. Rav Mari bar Rachel, Havale ahi be sadyusa b'shimsha. Okay, so Rav Mari bar Rachel, he had these felt pillows. Now, these felt pillows were out in the sun. Also, the Kami de Rava, and he came in front of Rava. Now, of course, as we know, Rava was in the very fancy city of Mechoza, right? The people of Mechoza were very fancy. So it sounds like, I can almost imagine that this Rav Mari bar Rachel was a wealthy man. He had a very fancy house, and in his very fancy house, he had very fancy felt pillows, and he forgot them, and they're out in the sun, and he was concerned that his very fancy felt pillows are going to get ruined in the sun. So therefore, also the Kami de Rava. And he came to Rava, and basically he's asking, can I move these felt pillows from the sun to the shade? That's what he wanted to know. Amarle mar l'tatolinu. So Rav Mari bar Rachel, so he asks, Rav Mari bar Rachel, didn't we say Shmuel had a daughter? I wonder, this might lemaisa be him. I can't say for sure, but I wonder. Shmuel had a daughter who was taken captive. And there is this, isn't there Rav Mari braid the Bas Shmuel? And I feel like Bas Shmuel's daughter may have been Rachel. And here we're saying Rav Mari bar Rachel. We're not saying Rav Mari bar, his father. We're saying bar Rachel. This may have been Shmuel's grandson. I can't say for sure though. Anyways, so Rav Mari bar Rachel. So basically, right. So he asks Rava, hey, can I? Very interesting. So he's saying, hey, can I move these pillows on? Can I move these pillows? They're in the sun. It's a davar shemlachto leheter. Can I move it into the out of the sun? So Amrle Shari. So Rava said, yeah, sure, it's no problem, because of course Rava holds that a davar shemlachto leheter, you're allowed to move bein litzarach gufo, bein litzarach makomo, and michama litzel. Davar shemlachto leheter. However, Mari bar Rachel, he thought that Rava was just saying that he'd be allowed to move it because he needs it for, because he wants it to sit on. So he thought that maybe Rava was saying that he can move his felt pillows because, hey, you're going to want to sit on them, right? So therefore, Mari bar Rachel clarified. But by the way, Isli Achrina, by the way, you should know, I have other felt pillows that I can be sitting on. I don't need these L'tzorech Gufo, right? So, Chazul Orchin. To which Rava said, yeah, but don't worry, just bring them inside and, okay, if you don't need them, that's fine. Give them to your guests, whatever. Isli Nami L'Orchim. So, Rami bar Rachel says, yeah, but I also have enough felt pillows for my guests to sit on. At which point, Rava realized what was going on. Right? Rava realized, oh, I see. He's assuming that you would only be allowed to move a davar shemlachto leheter l'tzorech gufo l'tzorech makomo, but not from the sun to the shade, i.e., he's holding like Rabba. So Amarle, so Rava says, gilis adaitech dichraba svirlach. I see, you've basically revealed that you're assuming that the halacha is like Rabba, that a davar shemlachto leheter is movable l'tzorech gufo l'tzorech makomo, but not michama l'tzel, and that's why you keep on, indicating that, yeah, but I don't need them. Well, in that case, l'chuli ha'mashar l'dida chaser. Well, then to everybody else is allowed to move these felt pillows from the sun to the shade. You may not. Now, on the one hand, that sounds kind of like an insult, right? Like, you know what? You're being annoying. You're coming to me. You're asking me my opinion. I'm telling you my opinion. My opinion is that you can move a davar shemlachto leheter from the sun to the shade. And then you come and you're just like not accepting my opinion. Instead, you're like, accepting the opinion of the one who argues on me, Rabba, who says that you wouldn't be allowed to move these pillows from the sun to the shade. Well, if that case, get out of here. If you don't want my opinion anyways, don't come here. Just go hold like Rabba. But on the other hand, I think maybe you could say it differently, which is that Rabba was Rava's Rebbe. And therefore maybe he's saying, so therefore when Mari bar Rachel came and was asking Rava what he should do, so Rava told him his opinion, which is that you can move it from the sun to the shade. When he realized that Mari bar Rachel was holding like Rabba, he said, oh, you know what, if you hold like Rabba, that's my Rebbe, I'm not going to tell you not to do like my Rebbe. Well then, while for everybody else I would say that it's not allowed, but you should then continue to do, I would say for everybody else that it would be allowed to move these pillows from the sun to the shade. But for you, I'm definitely not going to tell you not to hold like my Rebbe Rabba. I don't know. Either way, could be he was being a shtickle harsh and saying, you know what? If you don't want to listen to me, don't come to me in the first place. For everybody else, it's permitted, not for you. Okay, fine. Amr Rabbi Abba, Amr Rabbi Chia bar Ashi, Amr Rav. Okay? Machbedos shel milsa muter l'taltalim b'Shabbos aval shel tamara lo. If you have these like little brushes that you would use, that they were made out of material, and you would use them to clear off your table. Okay, so after this, I guess like to remove crumbs or something like that. So it's davar shemlachto leheter. So we say muter l'taltalim b'Shabbos, you're allowed to move it on Shabbos. Aval shel tamara lo, but you would not be allowed to move like a broom made out of palm branches, palm leaves and stuff, meaning a regular broom, right? So a little brush that you use for the table, it's a davar shemlachto leheter, you can move on Shabbos, says Rav. But you would not be allowed to move a davar shemlachto le'isser, a regular broom, because it's going to be, as Rashi points out, that even Reb Shimon would agree that that's going to be also because it's psik reisha, that you're going to, you're going to end up filling in holes in the ground. Fine. Rabbi Elazar Omer says, Rabbi Elazar, af shel tamara, you can even move these brooms that are davar shemlachto Isser. B'mayaskinan, what are we talking about? Ile l'mitzarech gufa l'tzarech mikomo. Well, if we're talking, so all they said is that, you are or aren't allowed to move these items. So, one second, if we're talking about moving it l'tzarech gufa l'tzarech mikomo, well then, b'had lema Rav shel tamar lo, but then would Rav really say that you wouldn't be allowed to move this broom l'tzarech gufa l'tzarech mikomo? After all, he holds like Rava, that a davar shemlachto le'isser, you're allowed to move bein l'tzarech gufa, bein l'tzarech mikomo. So, v'arav k'rava svirle, ella mechama l'tzel. Rather, so let's say it's talking about moving it from the sun to the shade, and that's why Rav says that you would not be allowed to move this davar shemlachto le'isser from the sun to the shade. But b'halem Rabbi Elazar afshel tamara. But then would Rabbi Elazar say that you'd be allowed to move a davar shemlachto le'isser from the sun to the shade? No way. So the olam mechama l'tzel, really it is talking about from the sun to the shade, but ema v'chein amar Rabbi Elazar. Don't say that Rabbi Elazar is arguing with Rav, rather Rabbi Elazar is agreeing with Rav and saying that you would not be allowed to move a broom, which is davar shemlachto le'isser, from the sun to the shade. Okay, fine. New Mishnah. Kol hakelim anitalin b'Shabbos shivrein nitalin. Skip the next word. Uvavachiu osin me'ein melacha. So the Tanakama says that any vessels that are muchan, any vessels that you're allowed to move on Shabbos, shivrein nitalin, you're also allowed to move their broken pieces. And we're going to talk about in the Gemara if they broke before Shabbos or on Shabbos, whatever it is. So, uvavachiu osim me'ein melacha, but they just have to do some malacha, right? So, let's say you had like a pot, or actually, we have examples actually. Shivrei areva. So let's say you had some kind of a mixing bowl, and the mixing bowl fell on the floor and it broke. So l'chasos boyan his piachavis. So as long as you could take these shards from the mixing bowl and cover up the opening to a barrel, shivrei zchuchis l'chachos boyan his piapach, or if you take shards of glass and you can cover that, the opening of a flask, no problem. Okay, so you have some kind of a mixing bowl and it breaks into pieces. As long as you can use these pieces for something, so you can move them on Shabbos, no big deal. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda, bilvad shu osin me'ein melachton. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you can only move these pieces of the thing that broke if they can still be used in a similar way that they were usable originally. And he gives examples. Shivrei areva, latzuk l'sochan mikpa, v'shal zchuchis latzuk l'sochan shemen. If you have this mixing bowl that broke, well, the pieces would have to at least, have enough of like a receptacle that you can pour porridge in them. Just like in this mixing bowl, you would mix doughs. So you're also, there at this piece, you can't be so broken that the only thing you can use it for is to like cover up a opening of a barrel. No, you'd still have to be able to pour something into it, right? You'd still have to be able to pour oil into them, okay? So the machlokas between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda is that when you have a kli that breaks, and now you have pieces of the kli, in order to be able to move them on Shabbos, the question is, do they just have to be usable for anything in order for them to be considered a kli that can be moved? Or do they have to be usable in a similar way to how they were initially used? So, and essentially they're not, there's nothing new about them. Okay. Amr Rav Yehuda, Amr Shmuel. So now says Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, Machlokas shenishbru me'erev Shabbos. So the machlokas here between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda is when these things broke before Shabbos. They already broke before Shabbos. And now it's Shabbos. You had your mixing bowl, it broke before Shabbos, and now it's Shabbos. Demar savar me'ein malachton in me'ein malacha acheres lo. That Rabbi Yehuda holds that in order to be able to use the pieces of the mixing bowl, they would have to still be able to be used in a similar way to they were used before. It's like the mixing bowl, you still have to be able to pour some kind of a porridge into it. Umar savar afilu me'ein malacha acheres. And the Tanakama holds, no, as long as it's still usable for something. So if before Shabbos your mixing bowl broke and you can still use the pieces to cover up the opening of a barrel, that's fine, you can move them on Shabbos. But if these things broke on Shabbos, well then everybody agrees that you can move them, no matter what. Because when Shabbos started, the bowl was not yet broken. So even when it breaks, so the pieces are muchanan al gabe avian, right? They sort of get grandfathered in. That since when Shabbos started, they were part of the bowl, and the bowl was muchan. So therefore, even when it breaks on Shabbos, it is still muchan. Bein the Tanakama Bain Rabbi Yehuda. Most of Rav Zutrai asks a kasha, however, on Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, who says that the Mishnah is talking about when these things break before Shabbos, but on Shabbos everybody would agree that you can move these things. Masikin b'chelim vein masikin b'shivei kelim. We have I don't know if it's a Mishnah or a Brisa, let's say a Brisa, that says that on Yom Tif, you would be allowed to fuel your fire with kelim. Let's say you have a closet. You could throw your closet into the fire on Yom Tif. But let's not say a closet, or let's say like, I don't know, a wooden spoon. Sure, that's good, I think. Let's say you have a wooden spoon. So you can throw the wooden spoon into your fire on Yom Tif, right? Because it's a kli. You're allowed to move the spoon anyways. So take the spoon, pick it up, throw it into your fire. It's no big deal. But if you have, now getting back to our closet, let's say, right? Let's say you have a closet and it's broken. You wouldn't be able to, use those pieces of wood and put them into the fire on Yom Tif. Dinishbu emas. And now we want to know, 1 second. When did these things, when we say that you're not allowed to use, broken wood to put on your fire on Yom Tif, when did this thing break? If let's say it came from a closet and the closet broke before Yom Tif, so, or the Maisa, we could talk about the same broken spoon as well. Whatever it is, you have broken wood. So if it broke before Yom Tif, well then what's the problem? It was good for use as firewood when Yom Tif started, so why shouldn't I be able to use broken wood on Yom Tif? Rather, it must be that this wood broke on Yom Tif. And yet we're still saying that you wouldn't be able to use this broken wood that broke on Yom Tif as firewood. You'd only be able to use full kelim that you can move anyways. But if what we were saying a minute ago was correct, that when something breaks on Shabbos, or in this case on Yom Tif, it gets grandfathered in, it remains muchan, it remains movable, since it was movable when Shabbos or Yom Tif started, well then, why would we say that you're not allowed to use the broken kelim as fuel for your fire? After all, when Yom Tif started, it was a proper kli. So Ella itmar hachi itmar. Rather, we have to take a new approach towards Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rather, this is how you have to say Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Itmar hachi itmar. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel machlokas shenizbru b'Shabbos. The machlokas is when these kelim broke on Shabbos. That the Tanakama says that the pieces just have to be usable for something, and Rabbi Yehuda says that the pieces have to be used in a similar way to they were used before. The marsavar muchanu, marsavar noladhu. That according to the Tanakama, these pieces, they're muchan. They're considered prepared from before, these pieces are considered muchan, they're considered prepared, you can move them. Therefore, as long as they're still usable for some purpose, you can move them. If they're not usable for any purpose at all, well then it's just no longer a kli. But, it was muchan when Shabbos started. When it breaks, it remains muchan. And as long as it's just usable for anything, then that is fine according to the Tanakama. Whereas, Rabbi Yehuda is concerned about nolad. And he says, look, as long as this piece can still be used for the same reason as when Shabbos started, if you could still pour porridge into this mixing bowl, then it's fine. There's nothing new about it. You could still move it. But if you can only use it to cover like a barrel, well then it's a new thing that, before it was part of a bowl, now it's like a barrel stopper. Well, so that would be nolad and it would be muksa and you can no longer use it. Aval, me'erev Shabbos divrei hakol mutar no'avu chanu lemlachim ibod yom. However, if this mixing bowl broke before Shabbos and now you have a shard of the bowl that's usable, either for porridge or for to put on a barrel, it doesn't really matter. At that point when Shabbos started, it was a kli that was usable for whatever it's usable for, and that would be movable. Tani Chada, we have one brisa that says masikin b'chelim ve'en masikin b'shivei kelim. Okay, so we have one brisa that says that you're allowed to fuel your fire on Yom Tiv with vessels, with kelim, right? Let's say a wooden spoon. But I guess if the wooden spoon breaks, then you wouldn't be able to put that in the fire. Okay? Vitani idach, probably because of muktzah. V'tanya idach. We have another brayso that says, Kashem shemasikin b'chelim, kach masikin b'shivei kelim. We have another brayso that says that just like you're allowed to throw the spoon into the fire, well then if the spoon breaks, you could also throw that into the fire, no problem. V'tanya idach. And we have a third brayso that says, Ein masikin lo b'chelim v'lo b'shivei kelim. You can't even fuel your fire on Yom Tif with kelim, with a spoon, with a wooden spoon. The Gemara says, no problem. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Nechemia. The first brayso which says that you're allowed to put kelim into the fire, but not shivrei kelim, well, that is Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a kli is not muktzah, so you can throw it into the fire. Once it breaks, then it becomes muktzah, and therefore you can't throw it into the fire. The one that says, the brayso that says you can put kelim into the fire, and you can also put shivrei kelim into the fire, well, that's Rabbi Shimon, who doesn't hold of muktzah, and he doesn't hold of nolad, he doesn't hold of any of that stuff, and if the kli breaks, so what? You could still throw it into the fire. And the third brayso that says that you can't even put kelim into the fire, that's Rabbi Nechemia, who says that you can only move things on Shabbos for their purpose. So therefore this spoon, you can only use it for eating. You can't use it for throwing into a fire. Okay? Fine. Amr Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, Hani livnei de ishtir mi binyana. If you have bricks, lemaisa, if you have bricks, and they're left over from a building, you were building, and now you have leftover bricks, so you're allowed to move them on Shabbos because you could sit on them. No problem. You can move them. They're not muktzah. You could sit on them. Sharginu, right? Meaning, because the point is that you're done building your house, whatever it is. So you don't need them for building anymore, right? So therefore they're there for sitting. So therefore you can move them. Sharginu, but if you put them in like orderly piles, well then Vade aktsinu, you certainly set them away and intend to be using them for another building project, so therefore you cannot move them on Shabbos. They're muktzah. Amr of Nachman, Amr Shmuel, this is of Nachman in the name of his Rebbe, Shmuel. Cheres ketana mutter l'taltel b'chotzer aval b'chaim l'slo. He says if you have a little piece of pottery, you can move it in your chatzer, but not in a karmelis. You can move it in your chatzer, because in your chatzer, in your little courtyard, well, there's always going to be little things that you can use, and that you can use this little piece of pottery to plug it up, right? So if you have a little kli, you can close it with this piece of pottery. But in a karmelis, you're not going to have lots of little things to close around in a karmelis. Therefore, you can't even move at all this little piece of pottery. Rav Nachman Didei Amar, however, Rav Nachman, in his own opinion, not quoting Shmuel, he says, Afilu b'charmelis, you can even move this piece of pottery in a karmelis. Because in a karmelis, I don't know, there might be somebody's spit over there, and you can just cover the spit with this kli. Very nice. But Rishus Harabim, you can't move this thing at all in Rishus Harabim. Rava Amar Afilu Rishus Harabim. Rava says you can even move this thing in Rishus Harabim. Va'az the Rava l'taime. Rava goes according to his reasoning. The Rava avakazal b'riska de mechoza. That Rava would walk in the Rishus Harabim in Mechoza, where he lived. That Rava was one time walking in the Rishus Harabim in Mechoza, where he lived. Itavsoi misane tina, and his shoe got dirty with dirt. So his attendant came and he took some pottery and he was cleaning off Rava's shoe with the pottery. Very fancy. Ramu be Rabbanan Kala, and it was a big scandal. The rabbis made a whole to-do about it. How could Rava possibly be moving a shard of pottery in Rishus Harabim? Amar lo mistayeya de lo gemire migamre nami migamre. So to which Rava replied in response to this whole scandal, he says, wow, these rabbis are a bunch of fools. Not only do they not know anything, they insist on teaching these things that they don't know. Ilu b'chatzer avai milo avachazia l'chasuye baimana hachanami chazia l'didi. He says, look, if I was in my own chatzer, if I was in my own courtyard, I'd be able to move this pottery in order to close up, some kind of a vessel with. So who cares if I'm in my chatzer, if I'm in Rishus Harabim? The fact that it's permissible to move this piece of pottery in my chatzer to close a kli, well, I can also move it in Rishus Harabim to clean off my shoe, no problem. Amar Rav Yudah Amar Shmuel, says Rav Yudah in the name of Shmuel, Megufas chavis shenichtisa. If you have the top of a barrel that broke, so you have a barrel that broke, and so you have a barrel that broke, and now you have the top of it. Okay, so we say that you can move both the top of it and the broken pieces on Shabbos. Okay, fine. Mutter l'taltel b'Shabbos. Tanin Am Yachi, we also in a brayso like this. Megufa shenichtasa he ushvara mutter l'taltel b'Shabbos. If you have this top of a barrel that broke, well, you can move the top and the pieces on Shabbos. V'lo yisvos mimena shever l'chazos ba'es hakli, but do not, kind of smooth out this shard in order to use as a cover for a vessel. V'lismoch b'karya mita, or to put the legs of a bed on this shard. And if you threw it in the garbage, well, then you can no longer move it. Papa asks, well, 1 second, if a person throws his clothing into the garbage, because he not move it anymore, what? Just because you take a kli and you throw it somewhere, that means that it's no longer a kli, that you can't move it? Of course not. If before Shabbos you threw it into the garbage, well, then you showed your intention before Shabbos started that this is not a kli, so then you cannot move it on Shabbos. Wow, friends, I think that was a long daf. Pretty sure it was. Anyways, well, whoever wants to stick around, we got to recap. So at the beginning, we basically started off with a machlokes between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbah about certain brysas, if they were before muksa as we know it or not. Okay, fine. Seder. Rabbi Elazar said that they were before we know muksa as we know it. Rabbah says it's afterwards. Fine. Then we started talking about moving kelim on Shabbos. We had that interesting Mishnah that said that the Tanna Kama says you can move things bein l'tzorech, bein shelo l'tzorech, whereas Rabbi Nechemia said you can only move things l'tzorech. So Rabbah said that what the Tanna Kama is saying is that l'tzorech means davar shemalachto leheter legufo, and shelo l'tzorech means l'tzorech mekomo, and if it's davar shemalachto leisser, you can only move it l'tzorech gufo, not l'tzorech mekomo. And Rabbi Nechemia says that even when it comes to davar shemalachto leheter, you can only move it l'tzorech gufo, not l'tzorech mekomo. Rava, however, says that no. What it means is that you can move a davar shemalachto leheter bein l'tzorech means l'tzorech gufo or l'tzorech mekomo, and shelo l'tzorech means from the sun to the shade, right? Whereas a davar shemalachto leisser, you would only be able to move the gufo or the mekomo, l'tzorech gufo, l'tzorech mekomo, but not from the sun to the shade. And says Rabbi Nechemia that no, even a davar shemalachto leheter, you can only move the l'tzorech gufo, l'tzorech mekomo, but not from the sun to the shade. Fine. Then we started talking about, do you make gezeras on Shabbos from Yom Tov? Rav Yosef wanted, so we have these two brises. One of them says that there's no difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov. The other one says that you can take dried fruits from the roof into the house to prevent them from getting ruined in the rain, which means that there are differences between Shabbos and Yom Tov. So Rav Yosef wanted to say that the one that says that there are differences is that there are differences between Shabbos and Yom Tov. That is Rabbi Yoshua, and the one who wants to say there are no differences, that is Rabbi Eliezer. Whereas we had problems with that, and Rav Papa said no, it's based Hillel who says that there are differences between Shabbos and Yom Tov, and Beis Shammai says that there are no differences. Fine. Talking about moving broken vessels on Shabbos, we said if it broke before Shabbos, well then it's considered muchan, and as long as it's some kind of a kli, you can move it on Shabbos. If it broke on Shabbos, well then Tanna Kama says that as long as it's usable for something, it'll be acceptable. You can move it on Shabbos. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says no, it needs to be from within usable in the same way that it was usable initially. Talks about moving shards of pottery on Shabbos. Rav Nachman says in the name of Shmuel that you can only move it in your chatzer. Rav Nachman says in his own opinion that you can move it in a chatzer and a karmelis. Rava says you can move it in a chatzer and a karmelis and Rosh Hashanah. No problem. Then we talk about throwing a kli in the garbage. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel that once you throw it in the garbage, you can no longer move it anymore, even though when Shabbos started, it was a good kli. Whereas Rav Papa says that if you throw it in the garbage before Shabbos, you can no longer move it on Shabbos. But if you throw it in the garbage on Shabbos, you could still move it. Wow, I'm exhausted. I think that was a really long daf. I wonder if I'm hallucinating or something. I guess we'll have to see. Have a good day.